Ethan Blackwood built his empire on control and perfection, and Marisol Reyes trusted him with her life, never knowing that one hidden truth would turn her marriage, her pregnancy, and her future into a carefully planned murder. Ethan Blackwood had spent decades building a name that symbolized power, discipline, and success. Born into modest circumstances, he transformed himself into one of Australia's most recognizable billionaires through ruthless focus and careful image control. Every public appearance was calculated. Every interview reinforced the same narrative: a visionary businessman who valued family, ethics, and stability. What he kept hidden was his deep fear of losing control over how the world saw him. When Ethan traveled to Southeast Asia on a charity initiative tied to one of his foundations, he did not expect his personal life to change. The trip was meant to reinforce his reputation as a philanthropist, not to create headlines. It was there that he met Marisol Reyes, a Filipina woman who worked closely with local aid programs. She was soft-spoken, attentive, and noticeably younger than Ethan. Her humility and gratitude appealed to something in him that admiration never had. Their relationship moved quickly but quietly. Ethan preferred privacy, and Marisol had no reason to resist it. Within months, they were married in a small ceremony attended by very few people. The news only became public after Marisol relocated to Australia. The sudden marriage surprised Ethan's colleagues and advisors, but he dismissed concerns with confidence. He framed the relationship as genuine, calling it a personal choice beyond scrutiny. Marisol entered a world she had never imagined. The estate was vast, guarded, and silent. Staff followed strict routines. Access to the outside world was limited. Ethan explained this as necessary protection due to his status. Marisol accepted it without complaint. She believed obedience would ensure stability. Her new life revolved entirely around Ethan's schedule, preferences, and expectations. At first, Ethan appeared generous and attentive. He arranged medical care, language tutors, and luxury accommodations. But beneath these gestures was control. Marisol did not manage her own documents. Her visa, finances, and communication were overseen by Ethan's legal team. Every dependency was framed as care. To outsiders, Marisol appeared fortunate. She wore expensive clothing and lived in comfort. What no one saw was how little autonomy she had. She rarely left the estate without supervision. She did not socialize independently. Her world narrowed quickly, and she accepted it as the cost of belonging. When Marisol discovered she was pregnant, she believed it would strengthen her place in Ethan's life. The news was announced publicly with carefully staged optimism. Media coverage praised Ethan's late-life happiness and future legacy. Privately, however, something shifted. Ethan became distant, less affectionate, and more focused on logistics than emotion. He began asking questions about Marisol's past with increasing intensity. Ethan had always believed information was power. As the pregnancy progressed, he ordered background checks under the guise of legal preparation. He claimed it was routine, necessary for estate planning and citizenship processes. In reality, his curiosity had turned into suspicion. He wanted to know everything he had not asked before. Marisol sensed the change but could not understand it. She felt gratitude mixed with fear. She had crossed continents, severed old ties, and placed her future entirely in Ethan's hands. The walls around her life were invisible but solid. Chapter 1 of the story ends not with violence, but with imbalance. A powerful man who valued image above all else had begun to doubt the woman carrying his child. And a woman who believed marriage meant safety had unknowingly placed herself inside a structure designed to protect only one person. As Marisol Reyes settled into her pregnancy, The atmosphere inside the Blackwood estate changed in ways that were difficult to explain, but impossible to ignore. Ethan Blackwood no longer treated the pregnancy as a shared future. Instead, it became a variable he needed to manage. His attention shifted from emotional reassurance to verification, documentation, and control. What he once described as love now felt conditional. Ethan's private investigators worked quietly and efficiently. They traced Marisol's records back through local offices, school registrations, and civil databases in the Philippines. At first, nothing seemed alarming. There were no criminal links, no hidden relationships, no financial fraud. Then, one inconsistency surfaced, small on paper but explosive in Ethan's mind. Marisol's birth records did not match the age she had given him. She was older by several years. To most people, the difference would have meant nothing. To Ethan, it meant betrayal. His public image had been built on precision and control. He believed every detail of his life had to align perfectly with the narrative he presented to the world. Marisol's lie, even if motivated by fear or insecurity, shattered that illusion. He felt manipulated, embarrassed, and exposed. From that moment, his behavior hardened. Ethan did not confront Marisol openly. Instead, he withdrew. He limited her access to household staff and canceled appointments that were not strictly necessary. Financial privileges she never realized she depended on were quietly revoked. He justified every action as efficiency and safety. Marisol sensed the shift immediately. The home that once felt cold but stable now felt unpredictable. Ethan's presence became distant and calculating. She tried to be agreeable, believing that patience would restore balance. She did not know what had changed, only that something had. Ethan became obsessed with the implications of the age discrepancy. He worried about public perception, legal exposure, and personal humiliation. In his mind, Marisol's lie threatened the brand he had spent his life constructing. He began documenting everything, consulting lawyers under the guise of estate restructuring. His will was reviewed. Trust arrangements were quietly altered. None of this was explained to Marisol. As the pregnancy advanced, Ethan began monitoring Marisol's health with unnatural intensity. He demanded detailed reports, second opinions, and constant updates. What appeared to be concern was actually surveillance. He needed to know every variable he could control. Marisol grew increasingly isolated. Communication with her family back home became infrequent and supervised. Travel outside the estate was restricted entirely. Ethan framed this as protection from stress. In reality, it ensured silence. The emotional distance between them became absolute. Marisol felt invisible, valued only for the role she played rather than who she was. She feared abandonment but had no resources to leave. Her immigration status, finances, and medical care were all tied to Ethan. Dependence had replaced partnership. Ethan's fixation turned inward. He viewed the unborn child not as a future heir, but a permanent reminder of deception. The pregnancy no longer symbolized legacy. It symbolized loss of control. He began researching discrete medical outcomes, legal loopholes, and irreversible solutions. His searches were clinical, detached, and alarming in hindsight. Chapter 2 ends with a dangerous shift. Ethan Blackwood no longer saw Marisol Reyes as a person who made a mistake. He saw her as a threat to his identity. And in a world where image mattered more than life, that realization set something irreversible into motion. Marisol Reyes died in the quietest way possible, inside a home designed to hide noise, questions, and truth. The official report described her death as sudden medical failure related to pregnancy complications. At first glance, nothing appeared out of place. There were no signs of struggle, no injuries, and no evidence of forced harm. The estate remained sealed in its usual silence, guarded and orderly. Ethan Blackwood informed authorities that he had been away attending a business meeting when Marisol collapsed. He returned to find her unresponsive. His statement was calm, detailed, and prepared. Emergency services arrived quickly, but Marisol was already gone. The unborn child did not survive. Initial assumptions leaned toward tragedy rather than crime. Pregnancy can be unpredictable, especially under stress. But small inconsistencies began to surface almost immediately. Medical staff noted that Marisol's health records showed no warning signs severe enough to explain sudden organ failure. Her pregnancy had been progressing normally. The absence of a clear cause raised quiet concern. The autopsy was ordered as a formality, not suspicion. That changed when Dr. Nathan Cole identified chemical traces in Marisol's system that did not occur naturally. The substance was rare and specifically engineered to break down quickly after death. Its effects mimicked organ failure while leaving minimal residue. This was not an accident. It was intervention disguised as nature. Further analysis revealed the toxin had been administered in small doses over time. This method required planning, access, and patience. It could not have been delivered by a stranger or a single impulsive act. The person responsible had intimate proximity and control over Marisol's environment. Investigators turned their attention to the estate's security systems. No unauthorized entry was recorded. No staff movement aligned with the timeline of poisoning. The security logs showed only routine activity. Whoever introduced the substance did so without raising suspicion. Ethan's behavior came under review. He remained cooperative, offering documents and access without resistance. His calm demeanor, however, began to feel rehearsed. Financial investigators uncovered recent changes to his estate plan. Marisol and the unborn child had been quietly removed from primary inheritance weeks before her death. The timing was precise and unsettling. Digital forensics exposed more troubling details. Ethan's personal devices showed extensive research into medical conditions that caused sudden death without obvious trauma. He had also searched for substances that could simulate natural pregnancy-related complications. The searches stopped abruptly days before Marisol died. Investigators began reconstructing Marisol's final weeks. Medical appointments had been rescheduled or canceled at Ethan's request. Dietary changes were introduced under the supervision of household staff. Supplements and medications were provided by private consultants. Everything appeared normal on the surface, yet every variable had been controlled. The deeper authorities looked, the clearer the picture became. This was not a spontaneous act. It was a carefully managed outcome. Marisol's isolation ensured there were no witnesses. Her dependency ensured compliance. Her silence ensured no questions. The case shifted from unexplained death to suspected homicide, but proving intent against a man with Ethan's resources was another challenge entirely. Every action had been legally framed, every decision documented under reasonable explanations. The poison itself was difficult to trace and nearly impossible to source. Chapter 3 ends with certainty, but no resolution. Marisol Reyes did not die because her body failed her. She died because someone decided she was a problem that needed to disappear. And that decision was carried out with precision, patience, and power. The trial of Ethan Blackwood unfolded slowly, stretched out by legal challenges, expert testimony, and the immense influence of his wealth. For months, the case lived in documents rather than headlines, but the truth continued to sharpen with every review of evidence. Prosecutors built their argument not on emotion, but on patterns. They showed how control had replaced care, how planning had replaced panic, and how Marisol Reyes had been erased from the future long before her body failed. forensic experts confirmed that the toxin found in Marisol's system could only have been administered through controlled access to her food or supplements. The timeline demonstrated consistency rather than chance. Medical specialists testified that the pregnancy had been healthy and that natural complications could not explain the rapid organ failure. Every scientific conclusion pointed in the same direction. This death had been engineered. Digital analysts traced Ethan's online behavior in the months leading up to Marisol's death. His searches revealed a growing obsession with undetectable methods, legal exposure, and reputation management. The moment he discovered Marisol's real age marked a clear turning point. From that point forward, his actions shifted from partnership to damage control. Financial records sealed the narrative. Ethan had methodically removed Marisol and the unborn child from his estate plans. Trusts were restructured, beneficiaries were changed. All of this occurred quietly, legally, and without her knowledge. The changes revealed intent long before the final act. Lena Whitford's testimony became a critical element. She described Ethan's fixation on image and humiliation, his fear of being seen as deceived, and his belief that weakness invited collapse. Her statements confirmed that Ethan viewed personal relationships through the lens of utility rather than humanity. Ethan maintained his composure throughout the proceedings. He never displayed grief in public, only restraint. That restraint, once admired, now appeared hollow. The jury was presented with a portrait of a man who valued control above all else and viewed human life as expendable when it threatened his narrative. When the verdict was delivered, it confirmed what the evidence had made unavoidable. Ethan Blackwood was found guilty of murder. The sentence removed him from the world he had dominated, confining him to a life stripped of power and image. The wealth that once shielded him could not erase intent. Marisol Reyes was remembered not for the lie she told, but for the circumstances that led her to tell it. She had feared losing love, stability, and safety. That fear placed her in the hands of someone who punished vulnerability rather than understanding it. Her pregnancy, once a symbol of hope, became the reason she was silenced. The case left a lasting impact beyond the courtroom. It exposed how isolation, dependency, and power imbalance can turn deception into a death sentence. It challenged the assumption that danger always looks violent. In this story, danger was polite, patient, and hidden behind generosity. In the end, Marisol's story became a warning. Love built on control is not love. Protection that removes freedom is not safety, and lies told from fear should never cost a life. Her death was not the result of one discovery, but of a system where one person held everything and another had nothing left to hold on to. The story closes not with relief, but with clarity. Wealth can hide cruelty. Silence can enable violence. And the most dangerous truth is not the one that is revealed, but the one that is punished when it is. As suspicion tightened around Ethan Blackwood, the investigation entered its most delicate phase. Detectives understood they were no longer dealing with an unexplained death, but with a man whose power and resources could quietly dismantle an ordinary case. Detective Callum Pierce approached the next steps with precision, knowing that one mistake could collapse everything they had uncovered so far. The focus shifted to reconstructing Ethan's behavior in the weeks leading up to Marisol Reyes' death. Staff schedules, medical deliveries, and estate security logs were re-examined line by line. What appeared orderly at first began to reveal patterns of manipulation. Certain staff members had been reassigned without explanation. External medical visits were replaced with private consultations, approved solely by Ethan. Even Marisol's diet had been altered under the pretense of specialized prenatal care. Forensic timelines revealed that the toxin found in Marisol's body had likely been administered through supplements she was instructed to take daily. These supplements were not prescribed by a hospital, but sourced privately through channels connected to Ethan's network. The substance was chosen for its ability to degrade rapidly, leaving behind symptoms that mimicked natural pregnancy-related complications. It was a method designed not only to kill, but to delay suspicion. Investigators also uncovered a chilling digital pattern. Ethan's communications became increasingly calculated after discovering Marisol's real age. Messages to lawyers, financial advisors, and medical consultants surged, all focused on minimizing future risk. He discussed estate protection, reputation management, and contingency planning in abstract terms that avoided direct reference to Marisol. The language was cold and strategic. Lena Whitford's role came under scrutiny during this phase. As Ethan's assistant, she had managed logistics, appointments, and confidential correspondence. While she denied involvement, records show she had coordinated the delivery of supplements and approved schedule changes that limited Marisol's external contact. Whether she understood the consequences remained unclear, but her actions demonstrated how easily authority could be delegated without transparency. Detective Pierce realized the case was not just about proving murder, but proving intent beyond reasonable doubt. Ethan had framed every decision within legal and administrative boundaries. He had created layers of separation between himself and the act, relying on systems to carry out his will. The challenge was showing that these systems were tools, not coincidences. Pressure mounted as Ethan's legal team pushed back aggressively. They challenged forensic interpretations, questioned procedural integrity, and attempted to reframe the narrative as a tragic medical anomaly. Media coverage intensified, dividing public opinion. Some viewed Ethan as a grieving husband under attack. Others saw the emerging outline of a calculated crime. What tipped the balance was the convergence of evidence rather than a single revelation. The timing of the will changes, the digital research history, the supplement sourcing, and the isolation of Marisol all pointed in the same direction. None of these elements alone proved guilt. Together, they formed a structure of intent that could not be ignored. By the end of this phase, investigators were certain of one thing: Marisol's death was not an unfortunate consequence of stress or illness. It was the final step in a sequence that began the moment Ethan felt his control threatened. The pregnancy, the age discovery, and the fear of exposure had converged into a decision made quietly and executed patiently. Chapter 4 ends with a fragile moment of balance. The truth was visible, but not yet secured. Ethan Blackwood still walked free, shielded by influence and ambiguity, but the foundation beneath him had cracked, and the story he built so carefully was beginning to collapse under the weight of what he had done.